From Tree to Book. The 1,000-Year Journey of Paper. Hello. Today, we embark on a journey through time, a journey that begins not with ink or words, but with the very material that made writing itself possible. Paper. Paper. A simple, thin sheet that carries the weight of civilizations. It has preserved dreams, recorded empires, and allowed ideas to travel beyond centuries. Yet, behind every page we turn lies a story far older than writing itself, a story of transformation, from nature to knowledge, from tree to book. The origins of paper. Writing with nature. Long before humanity discovered how to make paper, it had already begun to search for ways to record thoughts, trade, and memories. The first pages of history were not made of paper, but of what nature offered: stone, clay, wood, and animal skin. In Mesopotamia, people carved symbols on wet clay tablets, letting them dry under the sun. In Egypt, the papyrus plant became the first flexible writing surface. Its stem was sliced, layered, and pressed, creating sheets on which scribes inscribed royal decrees and religious texts. Across the Mediterranean, in Greece and Rome, wax-covered wooden tablets were used for everyday notes, while scrolls made of parchment, prepared from animal skins, became the carriers of sacred and literary works. However, all these materials had limitations. Clay was heavy and fragile, papyrus cracked easily in humidity, and parchment, though durable, was costly and time-consuming to produce. The world needed something more, a material light enough to carry, strong enough to endure, and cheap enough to share knowledge with everyone. That need would eventually lead humanity eastward, toward a discovery that would forever change the written world. It was in ancient China, around the 2nd century of the first millennium, that the true revolution began. Historical records tell us that an official named Cai Lun, serving in the court of the Han Dynasty, perfected a method of making paper using tree bark, hemp, and rags. By beating and soaking these fibers in water, then pressing and drying the mixture into thin sheets, Cai Lun created a smooth, durable, and inexpensive medium for writing. This innovation transformed the way information was recorded and spread. Paper, born from the simplest elements of nature, wood, water, and time, became one of humanity's greatest inventions. It was not just a material. It was a bridge between thought and permanence. Every civilization that encountered it would soon recognize its power to shape memory, culture, and knowledge. The journey of paper. In the East. From the heart of China, the art of paper-making slowly began to spread beyond its borders. At first, it was a secret closely guarded by Chinese artisans and imperial officials, for paper had become a symbol of culture, administration, and power. The earliest uses of paper were not for literature or art, but for practical purposes: official documents, wrapping, and even clothing for the wealthy. Yet knowledge has a way of traveling. By the 7th century of the first millennium, papermaking had reached Korea and Japan. In these lands, the craft took on unique local forms. The Japanese, for instance, began to produce washi, a type of handmade paper created from the inner bark of the mulberry tree. Washi was strong, flexible, and capable of lasting for centuries without yellowing. It became a vital part of Japanese culture, used not only for writing, but also for art, architecture, and spiritual practice. Paper's journey through Asia was not only a technical expansion, but also a cultural exchange. Each civilization it touched reshaped the material according to its needs and worldview. In Buddhist monasteries, monks used it to copy sacred texts, helping spread the teachings of Buddha across the continent. In China, paper was also used to create intricate art forms, from calligraphy to delicate cut paper decorations that celebrated festivals and honored ancestors. However, the most significant turning point came in the early 8th century, when papermaking crossed the western boundaries of China and entered Central Asia. According to historical accounts, after a battle near Samarkand, captured Chinese artisans revealed the secrets of papermaking to the local people. This single event marked the beginning of paper's westward journey, a migration of knowledge that would eventually reshape the entire intellectual landscape of the Old World. Paper was no longer an Eastern treasure. It had become a global messenger, carrying the words, prayers, and philosophies of different civilizations from one corner of the world to another. The westward journey, from the Silk Road to Al-Andalus. The story of paper's expansion toward the West is a story of movement, of merchants, scholars, and empires. Along the great arteries of the ancient world, especially the Silk Road, paper became both a traded commodity and a transmitter of civilization itself. Every caravan that crossed the deserts of Central Asia carried not only silk and spices, but also sheets of wisdom, fragile yet enduring. The decisive moment came in the year 751, during the Battle of Talas, where Chinese and Arab forces clashed near the Sirdarya River. Among the Chinese captives were artisans who possessed the precious knowledge of paper-making. These artisans were taken to Samarkand, one of the flourishing cities of the Islamic world. There, under Arab patronage, they established the first paper mills outside of China. This marked the birth of the Islamic paper industry and the true globalization of the medium. From Samarkand, the technique spread rapidly across the Islamic Empire. Baghdad, the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate, became a major center of paper production. By the 9th century, the city's bustling markets were filled with manuscripts and books, written on smooth, durable sheets of paper. Scholars, poets, and scientists of the Islamic Golden Age, from Al-Kindi to Al-Farabi, from Avicenna to Al-Hazen, all relied on this new material to record their discoveries and ideas. Paper was more than a tool. It was an engine of intellectual progress. It enabled the establishment of vast libraries, such as the famous House of Wisdom in Baghdad, where translations, experiments, and philosophical debates flourished. The cheapness and availability of paper compared to parchment made knowledge accessible to a broader circle of people, accelerating the exchange of ideas among scholars from Persia, Syria, Egypt, and Spain. Through the trade networks of the Mediterranean and North Africa, paper traveled even further. In the 10th century, it reached Cairo, where it became indispensable for administrative records and religious texts. From there, it crossed to Morocco and Al-Andalus, the Muslim-ruled territories in the Iberian Peninsula. In cities like Toledo, Seville, and Cordoba, paper mills were established, and Europe's first encounters with paper began. Cordoba, in particular, became a beacon of learning. Its libraries contained hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, works on medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy, many of them written on paper. Through these manuscripts, European scholars would later rediscover the lost knowledge of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Thus, through conquest and commerce, through translation and curiosity, paper bridged the East and the West. It became a silent yet powerful witness to the cultural unity of the medieval world. While kingdoms rose and fell, while religions clashed and mingled, the thin, delicate sheet of paper remained constant, a quiet surface upon which the thoughts of humanity continued to unfold. Paper and writing. The transformation of knowledge. Transmission. Paper alone does not create a revolution. What makes it meaningful, effective, and transformative are the words written upon it. Paper is a silent surface on its own, but when combined with writing, it begins to speak. Writing is one of humanity's most powerful inventions. It allows emotions, ideas, commands, prayers, laws, and stories to be carried across time and space. However, the power of writing is measured by how widely it can spread. This is where paper steps in. With its affordability, portability, and producibility, it liberates writing. Previously, knowledge inscribed on clay tablets or parchments reached only a limited audience. Transcribing a parchment into a book could take weeks or even months. But paper accelerated this process. Writing no longer belonged solely to priests, kings, or philosophers. Merchants wrote, peasants wrote, students wrote, poets wrote. With the arrival of paper, literature flourished. Letters were exchanged, and diaries were kept. Paper provided individuals a means to project their inner voice into the world. For the first time, ordinary people could record their thoughts, and these writings could be read by others. This was not just an exchange of information, it was a bridge of empathy. The alliance between paper and writing allowed thoughts to transcend geographical boundaries. Different cultures, languages, and civilizations could read each other's texts. Translations were made, discussions emerged, and new ideas were generated. Paper thus played a foundational role not only for individual expression, but also for humanity's collective memory. In short, if writing is the form of thought, paper became its carrier. And this carrier unlocked a transformation in history unlike any other. This transformation would soon gain striking momentum with the advent of the printing press. Rise of the printing press. The revolution expands with paper. Paper was the carrier of writing, but it had a limitation. It needed to be written by human hands. Each book had to be copied individually. Each page painstakingly reproduced by hand. This process was time-consuming, costly, and prone to errors. Information existed, but its dissemination was slow. Then came an invention that would change this limitation forever: the printing press. In the mid-15th century, German craftsman Johannes Gutenberg developed the first printing press based on movable metal type. With this system, texts could be reproduced not by hand but through printing. And this is where paper revealed its true power. The printing press required an affordable and easily accessible surface. Parchment was expensive, papyrus fragile. But paper? It was cost-effective, quickly producible, and capable of absorbing ink well. The first major work printed on Gutenberg's press was the Holy Bible. But this was not merely the dissemination of a religious text. It was the democratization of access to information. For the first time, ordinary people could access resources that had previously been available only to clergy or the nobility. As the printing press spread across Europe, an explosion occurred. Scientific texts were reproduced, encyclopedias were written, novels were printed. Paper had become more than a tool for individual record-keeping. It became the foundation for societal transformation. During this period, literacy rates rose rapidly. People no longer only listened, they read. They no longer only wrote, they printed. They no longer only thought. They could now share their thoughts. Information accelerated, boundaries disappeared, and ideas diversified. And behind this change, there was an apparently silent hero: paper. Without the printing press, information could not have multiplied. Without paper, the printing press could not have survived. This partnership was the revolution that changed the course of history. The paper industry, from tree to pulp, from pulp to culture. Paper was once made from mulberry tree bark, silk waste, and pieces of cloth. However, as knowledge grew, needs expanded, and populations increased. A few handmade batches were no longer sufficient. Thought multiplied, more people wanted to write, and mountains of texts needed to be printed. Humanity transformed once again, this time through industry. The 19th century became a period that reshaped the destiny of paper. With the Industrial Revolution, paper production entered the factory system. It was no longer produced in small workshops, but in large-scale factories. The raw materials changed as well. Cloth scraps were replaced by wood fibers sourced from forests. Rebark was crushed in massive machines, separated into fibers, and dissolved in water to form pulp. This pulp was then spread into thin layers, dried, pressed, and cut into large rolls. Thus, modern paper was born. inexpensive, abundant, widely available, and adaptable to all sectors. However, this increase in production also brought environmental costs. Millions of trees are cut down annually for paper production, and vast amounts of water and energy are consumed. This not only threatens nature, but also humanity's own sustainability. Fortunately, awareness has grown, and recycling has become common. Today, many countries reprocess waste paper, offering it for a second or even third use. This process reflects both respect for nature and dedication to knowledge. Because we do not only use paper, we think, write, record, and renew with it. The modern paper industry is a production line that shapes culture. Newspapers, textbooks, magazines, labels, documents, and even works of art are all products of this invisible system. In short, paper is no longer just a handcrafted material. It is an ecosystem. It is born from trees, shaped by culture, grown by human hands, sometimes returned but never truly lost. The role of paper in the age of digitalization. Today, screens are constantly at our fingertips. Phones, tablets, computers, and e-readers dominate our lives. We no longer wait for mail to send a document, nor do we reach for a pen to take a note. Information is transmitted in seconds. So, in this new world, is paper still a necessity? Or has it become a nostalgic habit? In the digital age, the use of paper may seem to have declined. Newspapers have gone digital, letters have been replaced by emails, and even school textbooks are moving to screens. Some suggest that paper's era is over. But the matter is not only technological, it is also emotional. The experience that paper provides cannot be replicated digitally. The friction of a pen on paper, the scent of a book, the warmth of a handwritten letter, all of these carry more than just information. They carry emotion. Moreover, scientific studies show that people remember printed texts better than digital texts. Knowledge gained from a book can remain more lasting than the same information learned from a screen. Paper supports mental focus, memory retention, and the learning process by providing a physical structure. At the same time, paper is not an opponent of digitalization. It exists alongside it. Some documents still require physical signatures. Artists continue to sketch on paper. And when something needs to gain official status, it is often still written on paper. Paper does not disappear. It merely changes its place. Its visibility may diminish, but its impact continues. Perhaps one day, it will be used only for special moments, treasured words, and emotional communication. Until that day comes, paper remains here. It continues to write, record, and convey. And as long as humanity exists, there will likely always be a need to leave a final note on a sheet of paper. Paper as more than a material. A memory paper. At first glance, it may seem like nothing more than a surface. Yet, it is the quietest carrier of humanity's memory. Fibers torn from the trunk of a tree gradually transform into letters, pages, and volumes. And these pages carry thoughts, revolutions, laws, loves, losses, and discoveries. Every book is, in a way, a tree, reborn as a wise entity. Paper can be a child's first written letter, or the recording of history for an empire. Sometimes it holds a secret in a diary, and sometimes a declaration that affects millions. It is silent. It is modest. Yet it is always present. Humans may forget, but paper preserves everything we forget. A small date scribbled on the edge of a letter can change a life years later. A notebook may carry the seed of an invention. A manuscript could be the only witness to a vanished civilization. Today we live in a digital age, yet paper remains within reach. It carries not only the past, but also the future. Because it is the embodiment of thought made tangible. In conclusion, paper is not merely a material. It is the tangible memory of humanity. And perhaps that is why, when we touch a sheet of paper, we do not only touch fibers, we touch ourselves. Paper is not just a material. It is a memory paper. It may seem like just a surface, yet it is the quietest carrier that shoulders the memory of humanity. Fibers torn from the trunk of a tree gradually transform into letters, pages, and volumes. And these pages carry thoughts, revolutions, laws, loves, losses, and discoveries. Every book is, in a way, a tree, reborn as a wise entity. Paper. Sometimes it is writing the first letter for a child. Sometimes it is recording history for an empire. Sometimes it holds a secret in a diary. Sometimes a declaration that will influence millions. It is silent. It is modest. Yet it is always there. We humans may forget, but paper preserves everything we forget. A small date scribbled on the edge of a letter can change a life years later. A notebook may carry the seed of an invention. A manuscript could be the sole witness of a vanished civilization. Today, we live in a digital age, yet paper is still at our fingertips, and it carries not only the past, but also the future, because it is the embodiment of thought. In conclusion, paper is not just a material. It is the tangible memory of humanity, and perhaps that is why, when we touch a sheet of paper, we touch not only the fibers, we touch ourselves as well. Today, here, we have traced the journey not just of a material, but of a memory that carries human history. Paper was born from the fibers of a tree, entered the hearts of civilizations, multiplied ideas, carried emotions, and enabled revolutions. It was quiet, but transformative, modest, but enduring, and it is still at our fingertips. Perhaps one day it will be used only for memories, only for the most precious words. But until that day comes, paper will show us not only the past, but also the world of tomorrow.